What you affirm repeatedly becomes your reality. I affirmed with such passion and emotion and conviction, Jesse, that I am 100% committed to beating cancer and living to be 100 plus years old alongside Ursula and the kids, no matter what, there's no other option. That became my reality, and fear literally was gone.
Welcome to the Entrepreneurs in Recovery podcast. This is a podcast for entrepreneurs and anyone who's interested in finding healing from addictions, from trauma, and attachments that hold them back from sharing their authentic voice and their highest alignment with their true self. Entrepreneurs in Recovery podcast showcases a wide variety of guests specializing in holistic health, mental health, wealth, addiction, trauma, spirituality, psychedelic medicines, habit change, integration, and much more. I love interviewing individuals who have overcome tremendous odds in order to share their innate greatness with us and share their current endeavors with the world. So you're going to hear many helpful tools, ideas, authenticity, vulnerability, synchronicities, and inspiring stories that will impact your mind, body, and soul. Also, I want to let you know about the future of this podcast, and the future is going to be with YouTube and video content. So not only am I going to have audio content, I'm going to have video. So please check out the YouTube channel and subscribe. Please be sure to just subscribe and like the video, especially the one you're hearing today with Hal Elrod. You also want to make sure you hit that notification bell for any notifications of new episodes coming out. And I'm going to start sharing on a consistent basis, on a weekly basis. Thank you for being so patient with me as I navigated my first podcast. I want to let you know that there's a lot happening in my life, and going forward, I'm going to be sharing more about my journey, more about my story, more solo casts. So this is going to be the first podcast that's going to mention anyone who's come on my show. I'm extremely grateful for, and anyone who's listening to my show, thank you so much for listening. So going forward, you're going to get to know me much better. I'm going to start to do more solo episodes. Today's episode is extremely meaningful. Hal Elrod he's just an amazing leader, entrepreneur, father. He is in many ways responsible for me becoming an entrepreneur. His book, The Miracle Morning, I was working at a job at Verizon, and you're going to hear this in the episode, but I was working at a career at Verizon, and I jumped ship after listening to his reading his book, listening to his message, and then attending one of his Miracle Morning conferences, events, which led to me joining his mastermind. So you're going to hear all about this in the episode, but Hal Elrod is just an amazing author as well. He wrote the book, The Miracle Morning. I think it has over 36,000 reviews on Amazon. So just really excited about this. You're going to really get to know Hal. You're going to get to know me better, my story, how this began. So just check in, tune in. This is an amazing episode. Sit back, relax, and really hope you enjoy the show. Hal Elrod, welcome to the show, my friend.
Jesse, it is so good to see you, brother.
Yeah, I am really excited. I think this has been about a year in the making. And even before I even had the podcast, you had inspired me to start this podcast way back. And we're going to get into that story and the time that we have. But I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show. It's a real honor to have you today.
No, it's mutual, man. I've loved you since the day I met you. We've known each other for quite a few years, and we don't get to catch up very often. So it's always kind of like an interesting thing where it's kind of like calling an old friend and catching up, but like we get to do it in public and with a bunch of people listening, right?
Yeah, literally. This is going to be a catch up because I'm really excited to all the things that you've got into. There's many people who know you. There's many people who don't know you. But today I'm really hoping that the people that don't know you and the audience that I reach, that they can find your work in every way, shape, and form. So I would love to really just start out with letting the audience know a little bit about your story. You have quite an amazing story. I love to hear my guest story. So you can go wherever you want with your story, and then we'll just take it from there.
Yeah, I'm feeling really good about this being a high-level synopsis because I normally start getting too deep into it, and I'm like, oh man, 20 minutes just went by, and I'm only like a little bit into my story. So here's the story. So I grew up in a small town in Oakhurst. It was Oakhurst, California. It was 30,000 people in Northern California. When I was in 6th grade, my parents bought a grocery store with a house built onto the top and the back of the grocery store, built in 1945. So I lived in a grocery store. Like in the morning when I needed milk for cereal, I went in my pajamas, walked into the grocery store, and went back into my living room, which was a door from the grocery store into our living room, right? So it's kind of a cool way to grow up. I grew up very, very average and mediocre. Like I was never much of an athlete. I didn't get good grades. I was really, really pretty mediocre at most things that I did. I was the class clown. I got in trouble in high school. The only thing not mediocre is I set the record for the most hours of detention for anyone ever at our high school. It was like 180 hours, and my parents had to like donate money to the school so I could like get out of it or whatever. Otherwise I couldn't graduate. So anyway, at 19, my whole life changed. I started selling Cutco cutlery. And that was the first time in my life where I was like, wait, maybe I can do something like extraordinary. Like I know I've been average my whole life, but like, why not me? Why not now? Why don't I try to break this all-time record for the most anyone's ever sold in the first 10 days of Cutco? And 10 days later, a lot of ups and downs, I broke the record. And that was it was a rebirth. It was like, oh, wow, I have what it takes to be successful. Like the first 19 years of my life showed very little, if any, of that possibility. But like, it's what Tony Robbins says over and over, right? Tony's been saying it for decades. In our moments of decision, our destiny is shaped. And on my second day of my training, I was like, why not me? Why not now? I'm going to try to break the record. I'm going to not try. I'm going to commit to give it everything I have. And I ended up doing it. Well, my life really took a turn. Fast forward a year and a half into my Cutco career, and I gave a speech at a Cutco conference. Driving home that night in my first ever new car, I had bought a brand new Ford Mustang 3 weeks prior, shiny white Ford Mustang 5-speed. And that night, my car was hit head on by a drunk driver at 80 miles per hour, and I was found dead at the scene. It took the paramedics an hour, the fire department, to cut the roof off of the car and peel me out because I was crushed inside the car. And when they did, I bled to death, and I was clinically dead for 6 minutes. My heart stopped. I was in a coma for 6 days. I woke up being told I would never walk again, and I had permanent brain damage. And I made the decision that I'm going to commit to giving it everything I have to walk again, while I'm simultaneously totally at peace that it may not happen because I don't know. So if I'm in a wheelchair the rest of my life, I decided I'll be the happiest, most grateful person that anyone's ever seen in a wheelchair, because that would be an unchangeable aspect of my life at that point. And for anybody listening right now, I would say, what's your wheelchair? Like, what are the things in your life that you allow to cause you emotional pain, but you can't change them? So the real decision is like, how do I just choose to be at peace with this? And that was what I decided. And thankfully, I ended up taking my first step 3 weeks later. And then last part of the story I'll share, and of course, there's lots more we can unpack, but in 2008, the U.S. economy crashed. I crashed with it. I got depressed. I lost my house. It was foreclosed on. I was living on credit cards. And I asked myself, how can I turn this around? And a Jim Rohn quote changed everything. He said, your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development. And I decided I need to create a personal development ritual that would enable me to become the person that I need to be to create the success I want in my life. And I created this morning ritual, even though I wasn't a morning person, made up of 6 of the most timeless personal development practices. I did it the next day. I felt like my whole life was changing. And within 2 months, I doubled my income at the height of the 2008 Great Recession. Economy tanked, my income doubled. And we can unpack that and get granular if you want. It felt like a miracle. And so I started calling it my miracle morning. And I started my coaching clients. I taught it to them. And then they ended up resisting. I'm not a morning person. I said, no, neither was I. Like, here's how you do it. And then within 2 weeks later, 13 out of 14 of my coaching clients went, oh my gosh, the miracle morning is changing my life. And that's when the light bulb went off. And I went, if it changed my life and I wasn't a morning person, it changed my clients' lives and they were morning people, I have a responsibility to share this with the world, because there are billions of people who the miracle morning could transform their life. You know, and fast forward now, I self-published the book. There's a new edition out with 70 new pages that came out in December, the Miracle Morning Updated and Expanded Edition. And we've reached, millions of people and changed millions of lives with that little morning routine that turned my life around.
Yeah, I love that. I'm glad we parked right there, because the miracle morning is where I found you. I want to get into the next part of your journey and all the stuff that you went through, but that's where I met you. It was the Miracle Morning book. I found it on Business Insider article or something. It popped up about morning routines. It was your book. It was 2015. And I started to dive in, and I read the whole book in like a night. I was like, whoa, I was sold right away, started practicing it right away. And for anyone who hasn't heard of the Miracle Morning, check it out. It has like over 30,000 reviews on Amazon. So go check it out. But that's where we connected. And eventually I would meet you after I left my job at Verizon. Actually, no, it was right before I left my job at Verizon. I met you and took these practices. And in fact, I saw you years later after being in your mastermind. And I was like, hey, I'm going to write a book. And you were like, just model the Miracle Morning. And that's what I did. So my book is literally the model in my book. You have your SAVERS acronym, which we'll get into. Yeah. I have my FEARS acronym, and it's literally modeled after that conversation we had in person where you said, just model the Miracle Morning. I said, all right, I got the permission. I'm going to do that.
That's incredible.
So yeah, really appreciate everything you've done for the world with the Miracle Morning, getting that out there. Congrats on the success of the relaunch, the revamped version of the book. It's very exciting.
Thank you.
And anyone who hasn't read that book, read that book. Yeah, I'd love to just jump into, we could jump into the Miracle Morning, but I'd also like to jump into like what happened at 37 with this super rare form of cancer and how that sort of redirected your life in many ways.
Yeah. What's interesting, you mentioned that there is a new edition of the Miracle Morning book. It's the updated and expanded edition. I rewrote every page. So even if someone's read the original, I do always say like, this, you can go read a lot of the reviews on Amazon. The latest ones are like, oh my gosh, the new edition's even better. The reason I bring it up is I planned on launching that new edition a lot sooner. And then I was diagnosed with this rare aggressive form of cancer called acute lymphoblastic leukemia, 37 years old. And I would have thought I was healthier than most people. Like I ate a really healthy diet and exercised. And now looking back, I could poke holes in I was taking Adderall. That might not have been good for me. I was, I was eating vegan ice cream every night. It still had a lot of preservative. I could look at the different dietary things I was doing. And I do believe in taking responsibility for every aspect of our lives. So for me, I don't ever want to blame like, oh, cancer is because of something out of my control. It's like I made an entire list when I got cancer. What's everything in my control? What's everything I've done or didn't do that could have contributed to my cancer? Because those are the only things that I can control, that I could change moving forward. There's no point in saying, oh, my doctors say they don't know what causes it, so I'm just going to keep living the life I was living before. No, I'm going to get better. I'm going to do better. I'm going to be better. And so when I was diagnosed with cancer, they gave me a 20 to 30% chance of surviving. Now, keep in mind, at that time, my daughter was 7. My son was 4 years old. So I've got a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old son, married at that point for, 8 years, I think. And it was terrifying. It was like, wait, I might die. In fact, not I might die, but you're saying there's a 70 to 80% chance I'm going to die and leave my kids without a dad. And very early on in the cancer journey, referencing my car accident and how I was able to take my first step and defying the logic of doctors, I thought if I did it once, I could do it again. And I told my wife, who was understandably terrified that she was going to lose her husband and the father of our children, I said, sweetheart, look, I know you're scared and you're looking at the statistic that the doctor has given us, right? Like this is only a 20 to 30% survival rate for people that get this cancer. I said, I want you to know that that's a global statistic for everyone that's gotten the cancer, including those that have other comorbidities, those that give up hope, those that live in fear, those that don't do anything proactive to beat their cancer, those that were extremely unhealthy when they got it and they stay unhealthy. I said, I want you to know I'm going to do everything in my power to beat this cancer. So in my mind, it's not a 20 to 30% chance I'm going to survive it. It's a 100% chance that I will be among the 20 to 30% of the survivors. For me, there's no other option. And I literally used my Miracle Morning, and we can unpack that as well, to save my life. I created an affirmation that said, I am 100% committed to beating cancer and living to be 100 plus years old alongside Ursula and the kids. No matter what, there is no other option. And the first day I read that, there was an underlying fear underneath it. But the 10th day I read it and the 20th day I read it, right? Every single day. And here's a high level lesson for this. What you affirm repeatedly becomes your reality. What you affirm repeatedly becomes your reality. I affirmed with such passion and emotion and conviction, Jesse, that I am 100% committed to beating cancer and living to be 100 plus years old alongside Ursula and the kids, no matter what, there's no other option, that became my reality. And fear literally was gone after a few weeks of doing that. The fear wasn't even there. Because it wasn't I didn't even think at that point that I could die. So, and I believe that we have, I know that we have trillions of cells, and it's been scientifically proven that they do our bidding, right? Well, that the mind-body connection, that what we think, what we feel, it sends signals and messages to our cells, and they respond. This is my layman's terms. I'm not a scientist, but in layman's terms, they do our bidding. So if you're living in constant fear that, oh my gosh, I'm going to die, this is going to happen, then your cells are like, okay, I guess we're dying then. But for me, it was a constant state of healing, of unwavering faith that I was going to beat cancer and be completely healed. And I think my cells were like, okay, I guess that's what we're doing then.
Yeah, you were speaking into reality, just like we're learning when we're just tapping into the new science of quantum reality and what's happening is like your words are so powerful. It can change maybe even the structure of your DNA. And, I think that this is something that we're just starting to tap into. And I think you're speaking to that in a major way. And I'm sure that was a major part of your success, really walking the walk of all the things you were saying in the book, in the Savers. And if anyone doesn't know what that is, we'll unpack that in a second. But that part of the Savers, that was affirmations, and you really doing that at the time where you literally could have been at the end of your life. Yeah. And it shows the power of words and powers of, what you focus on expands, and you were focusing on no matter what, this is what I'm going to do. So that's a really powerful testament to that.
Thank you. And for me, going back to, like I said, I had an unfair advantage in that I had done this once before, right? So during my car accident, I was told I would never walk again. And like I said, I decided I'm committed to giving everything I can to walking again. And while I accept the possibility that I may not, so I'm at peace with it. So either way, I'm okay. Like either I'm a happy, grateful person in a wheelchair or I'm walking again. But every day I'm like, I'm not going to accept the doctors, and this is a lesson for all of us with doctors. They're just going off statistics. They're making their best guess. They're human beings that are guessing, right? More often than not. And so for me, I was like, they might be experts in medicine, but they're not experts in me. They're not experts in God. They're not experts in, like most likely, in the mind-body connection, that wasn't their expertise or their wheelhouse. So I went, I'm going to pray that I can walk again with unwavering faith. I'm going to visualize walking again. I'm going to meditate and imagine my entire body totally healed, right? I'm going to see it. I'm going to feel it. I'm going to experience it. And then hopefully it'll become a reality. And it was literally 2 weeks after I came out of the coma, 3 weeks after I was found dead, that the doctors came with routine x-rays. And they're like, we don't know how to explain this, Hal, but your body is healing faster than we ever thought possible. You can take your first step today in therapy. So, going from never walking in, and again, I'm just sharing that because it just, to me, reinforces, it's anecdotal. But I think anecdotal is the most underrated evidence in the world. If enough people have done something, then you go, oh, well, just because they're not a double placebo scientifically, study, maybe there's some truth to it if people are experiencing it in real time.
Yeah, being a self-scientist, like if we look at how studies are created, they cost a lot of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars. They usually do it a certain set of people at a certain place, representing the whole population. But I really believe being a self-scientist and, really on your cancer journey, figuring out what works for you, opening your network up to like, who's done this before, who's already gone through this. And I know you did that on this cancer journey, and then bringing in, what can I use in every single way, shape, and form that's outside of Western medicine as well. And using Western medicine because it was so severe, you were literally going to die from it, that you included that. But I think that's a really powerful thing to say, let's also be our own self-scientists, learn, do our own research, not just Dr. Google, look at other sources besides Google. Where can we find maybe some holistic healing? And I know when we talked too, the last time on your podcast, you were talking about other ways of, healing too. And I think some of those ways were using THC. And I know that part of your healing journey has been that, even in the cancer journey. So can you speak to that as well, and how that is used today in your life?
Yeah. So a friend of mine brought me some marijuana in a bag, and she was like, hey, I use this to help with pain, with sleep, kind of everything. She said her view was like, this is a plant that grows in the ground from the earth, right? It's not some synthetic, chemical with side effects that damage your liver and this and that. She's like, and she had grown up with like pain her whole life, and she used to be on Oxycontin, and then she got addicted to it, and a friend died of it, and she was like, I got to get off this and find a natural cure. So marijuana. Well, for me, I hadn't done marijuana, smoked it or whatever since like I was in college, and I was like, okay, so it went under the bathroom counter or whatever. My dad and my dad was my caretaker, and we were at the hospital, and I got stuck in the back. It was supposed to be injecting chemo into my spine, which that alone, not pleasant. But the nurse missed my spine and injected it into a nerve. And it gave me the most horrific, unbearable migraine headaches that I had ever had in my life, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I think it went on for, I don't remember, it was like 7 or 9 days. It was I was just in my hospital bed. They were trying morphine. They were trying Oxycontin. Nothing worked. And I had on earphones, white noise, eye mask, didn't eat for almost a complete 7 days, and I'm losing weight. And my poor dad is watching me like wither away and in so much pain that I couldn't handle light or sound. So it was horrible. And finally, my dad's like, Hal, they're kicking us out of the bed. They need this bed for another cancer patient. You were supposed to be out here a few days ago. And I'm like, Dad, I can't, like, I'm in so much pain. I can't imagine getting up and getting dressed and seeing the lights and going, and driving home. Like, I can't even explain to you the unbearable pain, And he's like, Hal, we have to leave. I'm like, God. So he puts me in a wheelchair. I got the eye mask on, got some headphones on, and I get in the car. We go to the apartment. We had rented an apartment next to the hospital. And I immediately go to the bed, and I just lay down and I put the stuff on. And my dad's, he's trying to feed me. He's like, you need food. I'm like, Dad, I can't. I have no appetite, And after a day or two at the apartment, so I'm on like, again, day 7, 8, 9, he comes in and he goes, he's whispering, and he goes, Hal, what about that marijuana that your friend brought you? Do you want to try that? And I was like, at this point, yeah, okay. And I always, when I tell this, I don't tell the story very often, but when I tell it, it's always kind of funny because my dad has never smoked marijuana. And so he's like, what do I do with this? How do I, like, she gave me this little glass pipe. Like, what do I, And so I'm like telling him, he's like, how much do I put in? And I coach him on it. And here's the thing. I think I take 2, maybe 3 hits of marijuana. My dad holds it to my mouth, and Jesse, 5 minutes later, keep in mind, I've been bedridden, unable to eat, unable to talk, unable to handle light or sound for over a week. 5 minutes later, I take off my eye mask, I take off my earplugs, I walk out into the living room. My dad's like, whoa, you're up? I said, Dad, I'm starving. Like, I want some food. And he goes, well, how are you feeling? I go, I actually feel great. Like, my head doesn't hurt. I don't feel nauseous. And so, Jesse, here's, it's a long story, but I was simultaneously angry that this plant that grows in the ground has been demonized by our society, when in some ways it's a miracle. Like, they had tried every chemical cocktail that all have horrible side effects to try to ease my pain. None of them worked. And I was 5 minutes away and two puffs off of, marijuana. And now obviously you can get marijuana, I don't want to put smoke in my lungs. So, but if you wanted to, you can get oil that goes under your tongue or capsules or whatever. Right. But I did a podcast a couple weeks ago with Joe Sheehy, who is the founder of Cured Nutrition, and their mission, their products have CBD oil, CBD, CBN, THC. And I use their products for sleep every night. But, he's trying to change the narrative. Like, he's like, it's been demonized, this idea of, marijuana bad. It's like, no, it's this miracle plant that grows in the ground that has healing properties, and it can help people with appetite, with pain, with sleep, with anxiety, you name it.
Yeah. And even with addiction, it sounds really contradictory, but some people with cannabis use, intentional cannabis use, it helps with their addiction, especially with opioid use.
Mm.
And so I hear what you're saying. It's like we have these, like even ibogaine. I don't know if you've heard of ibogaine, but this has like been shown to help to treat and heal opioid addiction, but yet it's illegal in the United States. It's really bizarre. So opioids are legal, but ibogaine that treats it is illegal if you become addicted to it and lose your life, which we've lost many people here in New Hampshire, many people throughout the United States to opioid addiction. So, I mean, even you could have been a statistic, right? If they gave you opioids, who knows what would have happened.
Totally.
So I think that anyone can kind of be in that place of addiction and surprised by it. So anyways, I was curious because when I was on your podcast too, you were talking about, using it in a way that wasn't beneficial too at night, and ways that where you were taking a look at that, like, wow, I might even have a little bit of an addiction to this. And you were kind of regulating that. I think it was the first time you had talked about that ever on a podcast. So I did listen to that podcast recently on THC and CBD, and I was really curious to hear your take. And it sounds like this journey of plant medicine and things that are happening has become like, oh, wow, this could be here with intentional use to really help to heal and to bring some healing. So,
yeah. To me, I mean, that's nature is always what I look toward for just to guide me in most of my decisions and what I put in my body, and I'll mention this, and we don't need to go into this topic, but an example of that is I used to be vegan. And I was convinced that was the healthiest diet, right? And here, I'm not hanging my hat on anything here other than my personal experience. But I discovered, a friend of mine sent me an article, and I think he was vegan at the time as well. This was like 2006, and I've been vegan for a few years, and he and I was doing it for like health and energy. That was my reasoning. And he basically sent me this article that was explaining how vitamin B12, which is a crucial nutrient for us to have in our diet on a regular basis, a daily basis, was virtually absent in veganism. It was almost not impossible, but there were I think it was nutritional yeast and there were 2 foods that were obscure. And that's when I went, wait a minute, if I look at nature, if the vegan diet, again, this is my own journey, so nobody needs to get triggered by this. My own journey was, if the vegan diet does not provide this crucial nutrient, and the number one way to get it, the easiest way, is through meat, I went, maybe the vegan diet is not the best diet. It's not what nature intended. And so, and I will say this, I'm raw vegan by day and I'm paleo by night. So I still, during the day, I have an organic vegan smoothie in the morning, an organic vegan salad for lunch, and then I have, what do we have? Last night we had veggie soup, but normally my wife will make pasture raised chicken or grass fed steak or hamburger, whatever. But the point being, looking toward nature, right? And cannabis, it came from, it's a plant.
Yeah, 100%. I went down the same journey of veganism, was vegan for 8 years, did raw vegan, 100% raw vegan for a year, went down that whole thing, lost 30 pounds.
Yeah.
And, I went down that path, and it served, and it showed me the healing properties of plants and nuts and seeds, and living that lifestyle could be very powerful and potent.
Totally.
And doing 40-day juice fasts and 40 enemas in a row and all these different things. And actually, we started that after the Best Year Ever. So for anyone listening, there used to be these events called the Best Year Ever Blueprint Live. Yeah. And Hal would put these on, 400 plus people, and it would bring people together about the Miracle Morning community. And right after, or actually during that event, we decided a 40-day juice fast with 40 days of enemas we were going to do. And I recruited some people from the Best Year Ever.
Wow.
So yeah, it's really
incredible.
interesting.
40 days of juice, man. I've never gone, I've done 3-day fast, but I've never gone that long. That's wild.
It was extreme. The stuff coming out of my body was really scary.
I can only imagine.
Yeah. So, just so people can understand, Harless had an incredible impact on my life. He is the reason why I left my 9-to-5 at Verizon. I was at Verizon, the top of my game, won the dream job. And then I read the Miracle Morning, and I realized if I can, start my day a certain way, I can change my life. How I start my day is how I, create my life, is what your words were. And that really resonated. And then I met you in person, and I was like, this guy's for real. This is how he is. He is that person. And that authenticity, integrity helped carry me to leave my job, join your mastermind. Then you got cancer. Then I left my job. Then I ended up speaking on your stage at some point and just believed in the journey. So you had a huge part of that. But I want people to know that it started with those 6 habits. It started with those 6 practices in the Miracle Morning, the savers. that really was the bedrock for me to start to believe in myself, that I could start to really believe in this internal, which led to a spiritual journey too that continues. And so I just want to say, like, thanks. And that book is really profound. And I don't know if you want to speak to that, the savers at all, and some of that, but I hope I painted a picture of how it impacted me.
Yeah, I know. I'm happy to. The Miracle Morning, and thank you, Jesse. I'm just grateful that you're the reason I wrote the book. You're the reason I still share it with as many people as I can. You're the reason I did a new edition to add all the new content I've learned in the last 10 years since the original book came out. But the savers are 6 of the most timeless, proven personal development practices, all rolled into an acronym, SAVERS. And that can be done in as little as 6 minutes, the 6-minute Miracle Morning, or the average person does 30 minutes or as long as 60 minutes. And some people on the weekends are like, I do a 2-hour Miracle Morning, awesome. I've done that too. But
I've done that. Yep.
So here's what the acronym SAVERS stands for. Again, these are the 6 most timeless, proven personal development practices. And to paraphrase what Robert Kiyosaki said when he had me on his radio show, Rich Dad Radio, he said, Hal, you titled the book The Miracle Morning correctly, because any one of the savers will change a person's life. He said, but my experience has been that since I've done all 6 savers every day, he said, I'm experiencing miracles in my health, my marriage, and my business. And I think he listed off some other areas too. But that's the beauty of this, is any one of these will change your life, but you're stacking the 6 most proven, effective practices for personal evolution, development, transformation, self-actualization. And the S in Savers is for silence. Starting your day with peaceful, purposeful silence in prayer, in meditation, doing breath work, allowing yourself to experience the stress-lowering benefits, the clarity-increasing benefits of silence, whatever form that takes for you. The A in Savers is for affirmations. And I said this earlier, what you affirm repeatedly becomes your reality. So I'm not telling you to affirm some fantasy. I think this is one of the big problems with affirmations, is that we've been taught to affirm a lie. Like, hey, if you're struggling financially, just create an affirmation that says, I am wealthy. No, that's not what I mean by, if you say I am wealthy, that doesn't become your reality. If you say I'm committed to dedicating 1 hour a day to work toward generating an extra $50,000 in income this year, and you repeat that every day, and you follow it up with affirming why that's a must for you, so you have the fuel and the drive to push through the hard times. And then step 3, if you affirm which specific actions you will take and when you will take them to virtually guarantee that you progress toward your commitment, step 1 of the affirmations, right? It's a foregone conclusion, because now the only way you can fail for what you're affirming to become your reality is to not live in integrity with your affirmations. Because again, step 1, you're affirming what you're committed to. Step 2, you're affirming why it's a must for you. And step 3, you're affirming what you're going to do to get there and when you're going to do it. And by affirming that every day, you're aligning your subconscious beliefs with your conscious decision-making that leads to behavioral changes to be in alignment with what you're committed to. And I follow that formula for every one of my goals and every one of my rules. So financially, I'm committed to blank no matter what. There's no other option. Here's why, and here's what I'm going to do to get there. As a dad, I'm committed to blank no matter what. There's no other option. The outcome I'm committed to. Here's why, and here's what I'm going to do to get there. As a husband, right? In my health, in every goal and every role of my life. And that's just a page or 2 of affirmations that you read every day, and it becomes your anchor for your clarity of what exactly you're committed to, why, and what you need to do to get there. And I'll go through the rest much quicker. The V is for visualization. The V in Savers is you got silent affirmations, visualization, which is what the world's best athletes do. They visualize performing at their best before they step on the court or the field. And we should perform. We can experience the same benefits in our life by visualizing performing at our best before we step into the kitchen with our family or into the work, at the office, right? Visualize showing up at your best so that you've already gone there by mentally rehearsing it. And then when you step into the office or with your family, you're at your best. The E is for exercise, just moving your body for 60 seconds in the morning, a few minutes, some stretching, some jumping jacks, some yoga. You can have extraordinary benefits in terms of your mental clarity and your physical energy all day long. The R in Sabres is for reading, and the S in Sabres is for scribing, which is a fancy word for writing. And again, you can do all 6 of those practices in 6, 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes. And the idea, the reason, why would I want to do it in the morning? Couldn't I do those in the afternoon? You could, but you would miss out on the benefits of increased mental clarity, putting yourself in a peak physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental state first thing in the morning, so you can show up at your best every single day for the people that you love and the people that you lead. So even if you've never been a morning person, that's what the Miracle Morning, the book, etc., the practice is about. You don't have to wake up at 5 a.m. It's not the 5 a.m. club. Wake up 20 minutes earlier than normal and do at least a few of the savers, and you'll be, Jesse, you can speak to it, right? Like, you will be in such a heightened state of consciousness that it becomes such a positive addiction, you don't ever want to miss it.
Right. It's a positive addiction. We always talk about these addictions being negative, just like stress. We think that stress is bad. It's like, actually, there's positive stressors, like taking a cold plunge or a cold shower. There's many positive stressors, but for sure, the Savers is like a cornerstone, a staple that I built upon to be able to get the success I wanted. And now it's sort of like built into my being, because this has been since 2015. Nice. We're in 2024. Yeah. So 9 years later, it's still built into my being. And now there's Miracle Morning books for all kinds of things. You got Miracle Morning for salespeople, Miracle Morning for entrepreneurs. You got the Miracle Morning for addiction recovery, which was part of me and Pete, my buddy Pete. Shout out to Pete, bringing that to you and saying, hey, we want to bring this into addiction recovery. And then you having the wherewithal and the insight to be like, let me bring in Joe Polish and Anna David so we can reach more people and bring your story in at the same time. So, I think that's just a testament to you letting go and allowing other people to come in and say, hey, we also want to have a part of this Miracle Morning. It's changed our lives. We want to write something about, real estate agents or all these different walks of life. And I think that's really amazing. Is there any more of those books coming out? Miracle Morning for
the Miracle Morning for Seniors is the book that'll come out in May of 2025. So we haven't had a book in a couple of years, and that's the one that we're working on now. And I'm co-authoring it with Dwayne Clark. He's the founder of Aegis Senior Living, and he actually reached out to me saying, hey, a lot of seniors don't have a lot of purpose when they wake up anymore. Work's behind them. Some of them have lost their spouse. He said, if we could get seniors to start every day with, meaning and purpose with the Miracle Morning, he said, I think this would be, a game changer for them. And so I'm really excited about that one.
So I'm kind of curious, like, what about Miracle Morning for freedom fighters, or Miracle Morning for some of this stuff of like what's gone on in the last couple of years, and really come into this place of like, whoa, like before 2020, before everything that happened, I had a whole different view of what was happening here on this planet. And since then I've had a whole different experience of doing this deep dive. So I'm wondering, like, how did you navigate the last few years? And I know that I was even part of a group that happened, and I'm just curious that you were in. And I'm curious, like, how do you feel about what has taken place, and where are you today? Because it feels like a different climate today than it was like 2 years ago. Totally. How are you managing that?
I'm with you, man. I think most of us, except the quote unquote conspiracy theorists that were ahead of their time, but most of us were plugged into the matrix, right? We're like, oh, this is just, everybody's looking out for our good well-being, and they care about us. So no, I think I was red pilled, if I think that's what they call it, right? Where you were like woken up to, oh, wow, there's actually a lot of what things are not as they seem, and a lot of corruption, a lot of greed, a lot of, so all of that. And here's what I'll say. In 2020, when the pandemic, air quote, the pandemic hit, I not knowing what was what, and I had to come off, I was still on chemo. So for me, it was actually, I was immunocompromised. So like, I was the first person that was like, oh, I got to stay home. Like my immune system is shot right now. Like, I can't be around, people that are sick, and we didn't know what was what. And so anyway, long story short is I quickly realized I had to ask myself, what should I be focused on right now? It's like one of those important questions we ask every day. Like, what should I focus on right now that will give me the biggest gains in my life, that will make them allow me to maximize my impact, my quality of life, my mental and emotional health, etc. And for me, I realized that we as a society, as a global society, humanity was focused on something that was out of our control, or multiple things, right? We couldn't control this virus and how deadly it was at the time, or, we couldn't control the decisions the government made. We couldn't control the decisions our schools made, and you got to stay home and kids can't go to school, and if you've got to work and you're like, well, my kids go to school and I go to work, I don't know what to do, right? And what I realized is that when we focus on things that are out of our control, as simple as this may seem, I don't think we often are aware of it, we feel out of control. And when we feel out of control, it creates anxiety and fear. It leads to depression. And I realized, focusing on that which is out of my control does not serve me. I have to focus only on what is in my control. And then I started to brainstorm what's in my control. And the answer was, it was twofold. Well, it was how I start every day. Therefore, who am I becoming every morning based on the development, the personal development that I am engaging in, how I'm learning, growing, evolving, doing my miracle morning, doing my savers. So who am I becoming every morning is in my control, and how I show up after the miracle morning all day long for the people that I love, the people that I lead. So for me, it was like, okay, I can't control all this craziness in the world, the economy, politics, on and on and on. The only thing I can control is becoming my best and showing up at my best for everybody else and myself. And that was it. And to this day, that was a huge 2020 eye-opener, that every time I find myself stressed or anxious or worried, I'm like, I'm focusing on somebody else. I'm focusing on something else that's out of my control. Okay, I got to bring it back. Let's focus on being my best for myself and others. And that's it. That always brings me into a state of feeling like, okay, I do have a degree of control in my life. I might be able to control that, but I can control who I become and how I show up.
Yeah, I love that. That's great advice. And I think that feeling of sense of community too, and having people that you surrounded yourself with. And I was fortunate to be in the proximity enough to be like, everything's going to be okay. And I just have to do what I was doing prior to this, do the miracle morning, get the knowledge too, get the information, and then not be angry, but utilize that in a way that can lead people into different awakening, even if it's spiritual, emotional, even if they have a little breakdown before they have a breakthrough during what occurred. And, I'm also curious, what are you creating right now? What's your highest intention? What's your highest vision right now?
Yeah. So the Miracle Morning updated and expanded edition last year was 2023 was all about that book. The first 6 months, I rewrote the original book. I added 70 new pages of content, including 25 new pages just to the savored section alone. So it's like, okay, when I wrote the Miracle Morning, I was only a few years into these practices. Now I'm 15 years into the practice. What have I learned, not only from my own journey, but listening to, there's millions of Miracle Morning practitioners, and, reading the 30,000 reviews, getting thousands of emails every year. Like, what would I do differently if I knew then when I wrote the book what I know now? And then I added 2 really extensive chapters to the new book, which are the Miracle Evening, your strategy for blissful bedtime and better sleep, and the Miracle Life, your path to inner freedom. And both those are like 23-page chapters, I think, give or take. And so for me, the Miracle Morning has been my mission for over a decade. And it isn't changing. The way that I look at it is, a few million people have read the Miracle Morning and had it change their life, which means I still have like 8 billion people to reach. And so now with the new Miracle Morning book, there is a Miracle Morning documentary, which I know you've seen. You can go to miraclemorning.com. You can see the book there. You can watch the documentary for free. And last but not least is the Miracle Morning app, which, that has thousands of reviews, 4.9 out of 5 stars. And what was interesting is that gave people the self-accountability. A lot of people said I was doing the Miracle Morning, but I fell off of it. This app allows me to track my progress every day. It rewards consistency. This is exactly what I needed to execute the Miracle Morning. So the movie, the book, the app, for me, it's like, I'm not trying to create a bunch of new stuff. I'm just trying to get the resources that I know change lives in the hands of as many people as I can.
I love it. Yeah, I was at the premiere of the movie. It was amazing.
That's right. You were. That's right.
I've
In
seen it a few
Sedona,
times.
Arizona.
Hell yeah. Yeah. That was a powerful film. So check that out. Get the app. And Hal, just where can people find you? What's the best place to reach out and find you and follow your work?
I think miraclemorning.com. I mean, that's the hub for all things Miracle Morning. I also have halelrod.com, which is mostly for my speaking. You know, that's one of my biggest areas of my life, my professional life, is I'm a keynote speaker and I speak at events all over the world. So if you're looking for a speaker, halelrod.com. But for 99% of people, miraclemorning.com. There's a lot of free resources. You can find all the books there as well.
Yeah, definitely hire Hal for your next keynote. I've seen you many times do your keynote. So really was blessed to see that and have been inspired in my own life to emulate that. But hey, Hal, thank you so much, my brother. So good to see you. I'm glad we got to catch up on a podcast, and we're going to be chatting real soon. I know that.
You too, Jesse. Love you, brother. Thank you.
All right. Love you too. Hey, everyone. Thanks again for watching this show or listening to this show on the different platforms, Spotify, iTunes, etc. If you can, leave me a review on Spotify, iTunes, much appreciated. And we got some amazing videos coming out on the channel. So thank you so much for your support. Much love and blessings to you all.